call it the useful podcast because it's supposed to be useful to you, useful to me, and useful to the listener. So it's helpful to everyone.
I love it.
Yeah. So I guess it's just a bunch of questions to help us learn a little bit more about you as a person and everything like that. So
Perfect.
even before you did school design and everything, it seems like you were always interested in art, some sort of expression. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious, as a kid, when you chose, or before you knew you were going to be like a designer, or before you even knew you wanted to choose art, what were you even looking for?
I mean, I'm not going to lie, entrepreneurship and creativity has been in my blood since as I can remember. When I was 5 years old, my parents asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said I wanted to be a boss. And they're like, "Of
Nice.
what? What kind of company would you have?" I'm like, "I don't know yet." But I just knew that I wanted to build something really big. And then I also was very creative growing up. My mom really allowed us to explore that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into design and business. But yeah, I
I
think
mean,
it's
I'm
always
kind of
been in my
curious where the
blood.
artsy side comes from. The art side. Like, did you grow up doing painting, art? I'm assuming you did
Yeah,
some
actually, a
sort
lot
of
of
art.
fine arts when it was very hands-on. I was really big into sketching and painting, and I just found it quite therapeutic. I loved all types of mediums, and honestly, I do think the ADHD has a lot to do with it. Wanting to be creative, wanting to try so many different things, and experimenting and playing that way. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I was just born a very creative person. All of my siblings and I are very creative in general, so I think it's just a genetic trait that we were lucky to get.
So then, did you always know you like? I guess you wanted to be a designer, or how did that work?
Uh, Funny enough, my father, he worked in tech and told me that I would be a great graphic designer. And I didn't want to do it. I thought at first I was like, oh yeah, that would be cool because I really like seeing like these cool Photoshop things where someone turned like an orange peel into a frog or something like that. I was like, that's so cool. I want to learn how to make that because I guess the creative side of me was, interested in that. But as a career path, I initially resisted it quite a bit. So it wasn't something I feel like I really chose. I almost feel like I fell into it, but I think my parents kind of knew, they know their kids. So I think he saw what I didn't, and here I am.
So I'm curious. You started as a designer, a junior designer at an agency where you help Fortune 500 company clients, right? Kind of curious.
Yeah.
Is there anything specifically or anything specific you remember about how a product was made or how bad products are made?
Yeah, so that first job I got, I was in my first semester of school. So I was so new to the digital design world, but they believed in me and trusted me, and I was lucky enough to have a lot of guidance from my senior designers. And so I got to work on very large projects right away and really learn from quite seasoned designers. And I think that's what really started to like shape how I view products and how I design. Um,
Then kind of curious how you went from an agency to a startup. Because you did a Buddybuild, right? And
yeah,
Apple actually acquired Buddybuild. So I'm kind of curious how, as a person who lived in or was literally in a company that got acquired by Apple, you're in a startup, you're doing all of this. How does that like how's that experience?
that honestly to this day is one of my most memorable career experiences. Yeah, when I was at that agency, I was still in school full time, and then towards the end of schooling to focus on graduating, I knew I couldn't be working full time and in school full time. So I left the agency work, focused on school, and once I graduated, I looked into agency work, but a lot of the agencies wanted to split between like marketing and some product and web design and video content. And so it was quite a mixed bag. And I wasn't really interested in a lot of that type of work. So tech startups were the natural next step. I also very early on wanted to stay in tech as much as I can appreciate the print world of, packaging, traditional marketing and advertising. even like swag and apparel. All that's really fun, but I knew long term I didn't think that that would be as fulfilling for me as software. Just something about tech really just drew me in. And so that's how I ended up going from a couple startups. So right after school, I got a job briefly at a startup called Video Messenger, and they went under. So I ended up applying at Buddybuild and ended up there. And that was such a unique experience. My boss, Dennis, really, the way he ran his company, the people he hired, everyone in that room just had so much respect for each other. And I just still to this day really admire how he went about that. I was definitely very early into my career. So I don't think I could have, not that I didn't appreciate it for what it was at that moment, because it's still like you're getting acquired by Apple. And we were all involved in the process. Dennis made it very clear that if this wasn't something we wanted to do, we didn't have to. Um, and so that acquisition, when it went through, was very exciting because it was something that we were all behind. We all wanted that.
Yeah, I mean, even as an intern at that point, or I guess you were an intern at that point.
No,
No?
no,
Okay.
no. I was
That must
I
have
was
been
fully
such
hired.
a, yeah,
Yeah.
that must have been such a fascinating experience, right, in the culture of just being acquired, right? How does that like first you're going from, I mean, you probably didn't even know they were thinking about selling when you joined. And then
No.
yeah, and then you're doing something and then
Funny
you're like, "Oh
enough.
wow, there's yeah."
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to keep cutting you off. Yeah, funny enough, actually, I just saw Dennis last week. He gave a talk at a North House, which is a Vancouver co-working space founded by Ryan Holmes from Hootsuite. So Dennis came and gave a talk and was sharing a little bit more of the behind the scenes. And I didn't realize how early on Apple had approached him for that conversation. It actually happened a year prior. So definitely, I think it was well more than 6 months before I had joined the team. They had already had some preliminary discussions and were trying to figure that out. So it was definitely, there was a lot that didn't know and weren't aware of. I think Dennis did a very good job of keeping us involved in what was important, but also allowing us to just focus on work and not to distract us too much about what was going on behind the scenes until there was a bit more of a clear path forward.
Do you think that that whole situation is what drove your, I guess, like a fire for entrepreneurship, or it like ignited it even more?
Oh, absolutely. I just loved being in the tech space so much. And to see a company grow so quickly and be acquired so fast. We were 3 years in when we were acquired, which is very, very fast, but there were a lot of offers from other people prior to Apple as well. So I didn't really realize that I was stepping into such a hot product and, industry, but it really opened my eyes to appreciate how developers work, because Buddybuild is a developer tool, or was a developer tool, and that's what Dennis has spent his career working on, are tools for developers. It was such a foreign aspect to the industry to me, and so it really kind of opened my eyes to what was possible.
That makes sense. And then I know you said you don't like, or you didn't like what do you call it, packaging or doing
Yeah, the
apparel,
traditional,
but
yeah.
yeah, you actually did you did what, mask design for COVID? How did you even come about that? What was that? It's an interesting. It's a recyclable. There's a bunch of things going on. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in early 2018, after the Apple acquisition, I took a brief leave of work. I had been in a car accident and hit my head. So I was kind of recovering
Oh,
from a concussion and post-concussion syndrome. And after that, that's when I really just wanted to branch out and start working for myself full time. So that's when I started getting into more client work. And that's where VitaCore came into my life. I started working with them very early on into the pandemic, and they approached me for a lot of print design and collateral to start, which, it's a skill that I had. And even though it's work that I knew wouldn't be as fulfilling as being in tech, I am just so passionate about innovation and helping others and supporting others. So it was a no-brainer to assist VitaCore in, helping them take their product to market. But I did not actually design the mask itself. Their director of R&D did. So don't want to take credit for that side of things. But in terms of, getting their brand out there for them was, it was important to me. And so I really
I
valued
meant,
that project.
yeah, I was talking more about like Planet Impact.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So Planet Impact was a spin-off from a project that I was helping VitaCore with. They had started a PPE recycling program so that all the masks weren't, going to landfill. And they had created their own equipment and process and system in-house in Vancouver, BC. And so once they had all this equipment, the pandemic was also kind of slowing down. So, it's just hospitals that and clinics that are really using PPE, not necessarily the general public. And we wanted to explore more room of, what that recycling innovation could handle. And so I was tasked with, kind of figuring out how to bring this to market. And that's actually how Planet Impact was born. So I'm the co-founder of Planet Impact. I co-founded it with the founder of VitaCore. And initial program we started that with was the reusable bag recycling program. And I think honestly, in terms of my contracting career, it was one of my biggest accomplishments to bring something to life so fast and of scale. We were able to launch with all of Patterson Food Group locations immediately. They didn't even want to do any, trial periods. They were just ready to go all in. And yeah, so that building Planet Impact kind of came through VitaCore. And yeah, it was a really exciting process, and I learned a lot.
That's pretty cool. And then right after that, I guess you did two things almost parallelly in 2021 with, I guess, your first, before Winkley, I guess your first real version into or footstep into beauty, and then with Lux, is it Luxuna?
Luxuna,
Luxana?
yeah,
Luxuna?
Luxuna,
And Prio? Is it Prio or Prio?
Prio,
Prio. So Prio
yeah.
is more pharmaceutical and one is more beauty. And they were almost started, what, 3 months of each other?
Yeah, so
How does that work?
Prio,
And yeah.
yeah, I created Prio to really just aid more into the science and innovation of, in Canada. So those were my clientele, and, VitaCore and Planet Impact kind of came through Prio. That's how I kind of operated. And then for Luxuna, that is a very interesting play. I think when a lot of people meet me, they and hear that I'm in the lash industry, they either assume that I'm a lash tech, or if they know I'm not or find out I'm not, then they're, extra confused. Like, how did I end up in there? And that came about with a childhood friend. She became a lash tech and built quite a substantial business for herself and started training other lash techs. And so it was her idea to start a training academy. And she asked me for help. She wanted help setting up her website, branding, the whole thing. And so during that process, I saw that she was going to need a lot more help and also some more capital. So that's when I came in as a partner and co-founder, and we built this online training academy for lash techs, because in 2021 that was completely unheard of. You were always training in person, so to do it online, there was only one other person offering that. And so we saw a gap, and with COVID and all the restrictions, we were able to see the need. The people still wanted to advance, and honestly, they wanted to take that time off with COVID and, build something for themselves. And so we saw such a big demand. And yeah, so we just went to town and started building Luxuna. And my portion of that was mentoring all these lash techs on how to run a business, talking about health, safety, and compliance because of my background in health tech and med tech and the health and wellness space. So that's kind of how I got my foot into the door into the lash world. But I soon quickly realized that helping all of these students build and run their businesses was a very big passion of mine because, I grew up in a very small town. My mom became a single mom, and so we didn't have much. And, in the back of your head, at least for me, I have always, seen myself doing big things, but you kind of have this like nagging little voice saying, like, that's not realistic for the life you were born into. But I was able to completely change that around. And I was seeing other lash techs kind of find that same thing, but not everyone was able to fully navigate that. And so I
What do
started
you
getting,
think? Yeah, I love exploring this. So what do you think? Usually there's a situation or something that allows you to help like make that like switch, right? Or it's usually just like a mental switch that you have to flip.
yeah,
And kind of curious, like what was the situation that led to you having to even make that mental switch?
in terms of what do you mean by that switch? Like the switch into lashing or the switch into helping entrepreneurs or more my mindset around like how I envision my life?
Yeah, your mindset. Sorry.
Yeah, great question. In 2019, this is going to get slightly personal, but I think in a good way. In 2019, I went through a really bad breakup and I was just really struggling with myself because of, all the kind of like gaslighty things that, people like to plant in your head as they leave. And that's when I don't know what kind of compelled me to just one day I was like, I'm just going to research the law of attraction. And I was raised in a religious household. So in my mind, I always thought that, you know, manifesting these hopes and dreams and desires is essentially similar to like praying to God. Basically, people just labeled them differently. Um, but after some quick research, I realized that it is very different. And so I decided I wanted to test this out. I wanted to really just put it to the test. And so I thought the hardest thing to manifest is wealth. And, it can come in all forms, but I was like, that's going to be a difficult one. Let's give it that as the test. So I felt so stupid. I was sitting in my bed and at midnight and I was like, all right, universe, you got 24 hours. And I like plopped my head down, went to bed. I woke up and at that time I was doing some contract work for a startup originally called Coastline Market. It's now called Freshline. I was helping them create a cookbook for a marketing project that they needed done. And I get upstairs and I have this like free roll up the rim from Tim Hortons placed on my desk. And one of my bosses was there. So I was like, do you know where this came from? He's like, it was mine, but you can have it. I don't drink Tim Hortons. I was like, okay. So I go downstairs and, try to manifest winning a Visa card or something, a Corolla. And I won a free coffee. So I was like, all right, well, you
Okay.
were a winner, but not quite. But later that day, I got contacted by an old client that I hadn't talked to in like probably 4 or 5 years and said that he found an old invoice that was unpaid and had sent me an e-transfer for the funds. And I was like, that's a little suspicious. And then I had a friend in influencer marketing and she was traveling and I got a message from her. She's like, Claire, I'm in Jamaica. I've been trying to find a coffee shop with Wi-Fi all day to contact you, but I have like 30 people that want to work with you. I was like, okay, this is getting kind of crazy. So I get home and I'm just scrolling Instagram. I'm just kind of detoxing from the day. And I see this Instagram contest to win a trip to Bali. And I was like, yep, I'm going to do that. And I entered the contest and I told my friends, I was like, you guys got to hear about the law of attraction. It's amazing. Like, I'm going to devote my entire professional life to this. I'm going to let it make my decisions. And, I'm really going to kind of trust this process. And they're like, okay, haha, like when do they announce the winner? I was like, Saturday at 10 a.m. And so they're like, okay, so you'll be contacting us at like what, 10:01? I'm like, you betcha. So that Saturday morning rolls around. I'm like setting up my bullet journal, writing out all these things I want to manifest. And my phone from across the room just lights up, and I was like, oh my goodness, it must be 10 o'clock, and I just won that trip. And sure enough, I was right. I won a trip to Bali. It was a content creator retreat. And so from there, that's when I really saw the power of, being able to turn your life around. And I don't mean like even from bad decisions, but just like, again, that path that you think you're kind of born into and destined for, but like deep down in your gut, you just know that is so not your journey. Yeah. So that's when I was like, all right, this can be done. And yeah, I want everyone to know that they can do the same.
Honestly, yeah, if you try, I feel like if you just try hard, or even if it's like law of attraction, it's if you think about it enough, you'll find a way to your brain will start thinking about, okay, first you'll think about the prize, and you're like, okay, how do I get this prize? And then
Exactly.
your brain will just naturally start planning it out. And once you have
Yeah.
enough of the plan done out, you'll actually start, what's the next step is just for
Well,
you to go do it.
exactly. And then you get these, life will start throwing you, you're getting invited to doing this or doing this. And you start thinking, like, is this going to move me towards that goal? Yes or no? And so, you start slowly conditioning yourself into making the decisions that you need to be making in order to, reach that goal. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And then I guess let's back to
Yeah, I know.
back
Back
to
to
the
the tech
lash
stuff.
tech. Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of curious what that even taught you in terms of like there's probably you've probably talked to a bunch of people, a bunch of women, I'm assuming, just over and over, learning about the industry, learning quite literally what their business looks like. What is that actually? I'm kind of curious how that helped you build Winkley, or how that helped. And yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Winkley is entirely a spin-off of Luxuna. And basically, when I was working on Luxuna with my old business partner, she has since left the business and the industry. I think she moved to Europe or something, living her best life. But early on, I was actually just starters, I was floored at how much Lash Techs could make. I had no clue that these girls could be earning over $10,000 a month, and that's out of their house. You only need 2 days to train traditionally. We wanted to kind of fix that because training is kind of like a game of telephone. And so, one Lash Tech teaches another. It's very similar to, I guess, maybe like a tattoo apprentice. You kind of train under somebody. However, it is a much faster process. It's this 2 day turnaround. And, you don't need to know English. You can, like I said, learn in 2 days. You don't need any prerequisites, and it's not all that expensive. It's, ranges between, $2,000 and $3,000 to learn. And then you're kind of off to the races. But we realized that a lot of lash techs that were successful, they were doing the right things, but because they weren't taught how to run a business and they're not taught marketing, they've kind of just figured it out along the way. And so very quickly we started to realize that this was a gap that needed to be filled, to really kind of just teach them how to run a business. And then, like I said, my partner, she left the industry altogether. And so that left me running the business by myself. And I was so passionate about helping women build these businesses. It helps people that immigrate, it helps young moms that want to stay at home and be around their kids. It's great for students that, it's very flexible with your work schedule, and it builds a really good sense of community. So it's, there was so many benefits to it. So I didn't want to give that up. But I very quickly realized that I needed a lash tech in order to, I felt like, authentically continue building out Luxuna and what it could offer. And when you realize you have to rely on somebody else to run your business, that's probably not the business that you need to be in. And, I'm sitting here, I'm like, I know tech and marketing and business, and what am I going to do with this? And then I was like, wait a second, I know tech and marketing and business. And from mentoring these lash technicians on a regular basis and creating content and just even being in the lash community, I started seeing very common problems that clients doing no shows and they're losing that type of income or struggling to find a tool to set up booking, that kind of stuff. And because I was doing work with Prio at the same time for large scale businesses that are 9+ figures, um, I was like, oh, in my mind, it's so easy. But I started to see it really wasn't for them. And that's when I knew, all right, let's make this like let's just make this easier for them. Let's solve these problems, be done with them once and for all, because the lash industry started blowing up over, I'd say, the past like 6 years. And through that, there weren't any platforms built specifically for lash techs because it was such a niche service initially
Yeah.
that it's just not a company's bread and butter. And these lash techs are using these generalist platforms, but because they're not necessarily tech savvy and a lot of this is over their head, they're also operating on a phone or an iPad, not a desktop computer with a keyboard. It was really hard for them to try to figure out how to set up these systems, and they get really expensive and overwhelming, and they're not able to really see the value because they can't feel the value. They have to end up forming their business to fit the software that they're using versus the software should really fit them. And so that's where you know I knew I could help them. So I taught myself how to code. So I've done web development, and I'm working in tech for 12 years, conversing with developers. You kind of know the language, and I figured with AI it can't
Yeah.
be that hard. And that's kind of how I became a solo non-technical founder of Winkley.
That's pretty cool. Kind of curious, even more so, in like as a designer, you're probably listening to a lot of these different probably problems, situations that people run into. Even you say your community now. Like, I'm kind of curious how that helped you build Winkley, or what specific changes that you didn't. Kind of curious how your community helped you build Winkley, actually.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of it was just quite literally listening to the frustrations and complaints. My best friend, she is also a lash technician, and so she'll send me screenshots of her clients, and she's like, I don't know what to say to them. I don't know what to do. They're doing this. Am I in the wrong? And it's just a lot of people kind of coming to me for advice. And um, so it was really just getting down to listening to them and seeing some patterns. Being immersed in the lash industry, you really just start to, I feel like I'm a lash tech through osmosis. I haven't lashed anyone, I don't plan on it, but I definitely can empathize and relate. And so I think that's where I just started putting myself in their shoes and thought, all right, like, I saw my lash technician. She couldn't figure out how to set up multiple locations on her initial platform, and so I knew that that was going to be a workflow that I wanted to simplify. Another thing that was really unique to lash techs and gets kind of in the way of give in terms of their ability to use other tech and other tools is these platforms for booking that are marketplaces. They want you to list your address, like your business address, which is very normal and reasonable to know where you're booking. But these girls operate out of their house. They're moms, they're young girls. They don't want to be posting their home address online and then plastering the address of or the time of when they're going to be there. So that is like one of our features that you're able to actually list by your neighborhood instead, if you'd like. And when your client books their appointment, pays their deposit, in the event invite is the actual address. And that gives the lash techs the ability to operate hands-free so clients can self-book. There's no added friction, but it also leaves them protected without plastering their address online. So there was a lot of things that we had to restructure because a lot of these are home-based businesses and young women that safety is the utmost important.
That's pretty cool. Then I'm assuming, or not, I'm assuming. I guess I am assuming. Like Winkley got into the, do you Winkley and the League of Innovators as how Was that the product that got into League of Innovators, and how was that experience?
Yeah, so funny enough, Winkley kind of stirred about two ideas at the same time. So in early 2025, right when, coding with AI started to become a thing, it was like, okay, now I can actually probably start to build this platform that these lash techs need, and I don't need extensive capital to build it. But I'm not going to lie, my heart still loves the agency work. And again, because I'm so passionate about entrepreneurship and business and innovation, I wanted to build a lean software agency to make tech and innovation more accessible. So I had this dream of a lean agency and a dream of building a product for lash techs. And so I kind of started these two companies at the same time. And because I could not decide which path I really wanted to take, I applied with both ventures and I got in on both ventures. It wasn't until the end of the program and this showcase when I decided that I'm going to really dive in and focus on Winkley.
What was the kind of curious what a showcase even looks like or feels like?
Yeah, I think initially it was originally designed to be more like a pitch competition, but I think especially in the labs accelerator that I took, it is for earlier stage businesses. And so they kind of reframed it to be more of like a showcase of, some of the top students in terms of participation, business ideas, traction, that kind of thing. So that was my very first time ever pitching to anyone. It was a crazy experience, but I'm not going to lie, the day I enrolled in that program or applied to be in the accelerator, there were two things I wanted very badly. One was to pitch in the showcase, and the second was that one of their special guests was Mark Cuban, and I wanted to be able to ask him a question when it came to that fireside chat. So those were the two things I wanted to manifest in that program, and I was able to actually do both.
How was meeting Mark Cuban?
Very surreal. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I was a bit of a babbling idiot when I had my opportunity to speak to him because I actually didn't think it was gonna happen. He had an original date to talk to us in October and had to cancel like 20 minutes before. And so we got rescheduled till December. And at that point, we were told it was a fireside with Ryan Holmes. So he'd be the one asking the questions. But partway through the fireside, they started allowing people to ask questions. So he was supposed to only talk to us for 45 minutes. But at the 1 hour mark, I thought we were going to be getting off. And they were like, we have one last question coming from Claire. So I was a little taken off guard and a little startled, but it was really surreal to talk to him about AI and just med tech in general because he has his pharmaceutical company to make pharmaceuticals accessible and affordable and to stop the price gouging. And obviously my passion for innovation and healthcare and safety and compliance, it was like just again very surreal. And I thought, like what an amazing opportunity to get to talk to Mark and not pitch him because everyone wants to pitch Mark. And most of the time, the only time you ever get to speak to somebody like that would be to pitch in front of him. So I thought that was a very unique opportunity and very happy that I was able to do so. It was really, really cool.
That's cool. I mean, did you meet any other interesting people at the League of Innovators?
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, they are phenomenal at getting speakers to come in. We got to meet and talk to Harley Finkelstein, the co-founder of Shopify. We got to speak to Brian Scudamore from 1-800 Got Junk, which, the sustainability recycling nerd in me was so excited about. There has just been countless people.
Yeah.
Tara
That's
Bosch from Smart Suites actually took that accelerator program, and she's really big into that community. I've yet to meet her or speak to her, but I know she'll be around.
kind of curious how that program even changed your outlook on you building a startup, you building a business, you building the agency. Has that changed, helped impact
Yeah,
or, yeah.
it surprisingly, I feel like it changed so much for me in a lot of ways. And also nothing at all. I think in terms of the core vision I had and my mission that I'm on, that has not been changed. But how I approach it, it has been overhauled completely in the best way. I've always been one to put my head down and do a lot of work and then, go and ta-da, this is what I've built. And, I'm realizing that my introverted ways of, wanting to buckle down and do the work isn't sustainable for building a business. I need to really put myself out there and
Yeah.
tell people what I'm doing, show them what I'm building, be involved with people. So it's really helped me even just navigate some of those harder questions. Do you bootstrap? Do you raise? What
Mm.
features do you develop? Am I really solving this problem the right way? All of those things, it's overhauled completely in the best way.
That makes sense. And another thing I was actually kind of curious about your headline, it doesn't actually say you're building an app. It says you're building the largest verified network of Lash professionals. Is
Yeah.
that is that the goal of what you're trying to build? And does that change from the app in any way?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to build. And it doesn't change the app in terms of my long-term plans. I think maybe to some for the initial feature set right now is an MVP. And in order to properly serve my demographic, the lash tech industry, they they have limited budget and limited, bandwidth to be managing tools and systems and everything like that. And so in order to give them the unique tools that I see a gap for, I needed to be able to provide the core basics first. And yeah, so with Winkly, what I want to do is I want Winkly to have basically every lash tech in the world using it. I want people to trust your Winkly rating over your Google stars and Google reviews. I really want to make this a holistic hub and community where people know that they can build their business, they can scale it properly, they can do it with ease, it's fun and it's exciting. And I also want to, have clients feel like they can trust their lash techs and trust that the services they're getting are safe and healthy and done properly. And so I think the reason why I phrase it like that too is because that's my mission, is to build a community and to bring everyone together because um, okay, I have a bit of a controversial opinion. If people
I
ask,
love
can one
controversial
person,
opinions.
yeah, if people ask, can one person change the world? And I say, no, you can't. But that one person can start the community, and that community can be the one that changes the world. And so that's what I want to do with Winkly. And, if that's an app today, that's what it is today. If the industries tells me I need to be serving them in a different way, then we'll pivot and do it in whatever way is asked of us. That's essentially what I see with Winkly.
That's pretty cool. Do you think community becomes? I was talking to a couple of other founders as well. It seems like, I mean, even me, but a lot of other people seem to think a community kind of becomes a moat at this point where it's really, especially when AI can make a product in like a snap of a finger, a community is kind of what really separates things. Kind of curious on your view on just like how you think community and technology are being impacted like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think yeah, you're absolutely right with I am, just technology as a whole now. And even just social media. We live in such a rapid, fast-paced world that's like honestly, it's really hard to keep up. It just yanks you in and I feel like there are times where you're just dragged along. And you see a lot of people kind of wanting to, you know, build a successful app because they want to have users and that revenue, or they want to just slap something together and throw it and go to market as fast as possible. And so the approach I've taken with Winkly, it's been an interesting approach because I didn't really expect it to weigh on my mind as much as it has, but there's always this need, especially as a founder, to be obsess over the problem, and like you just lay awake thinking like all the things that you need to do in order to solve this problem and help the people that you want to serve. And you see basically everyone's highlight reels with, I mean, AI is not only building their apps, but it's creating the content to tell people that they built their apps. Like it's just so rapid. And, at times it's like a little discouraging. But then I go back to the roots and I remember, AI, as phenomenal as it is and how much it can do, is still not quite what we say it is. The way it's advertised, the way that people create their content around it, I find there's a bit of a misalignment there. And so, yeah, it's been an interesting thing to balance with knowing to follow, just your fundamental processes and system. I believe with really good tech, it needs to be intuitive. It needs to solve the problem. It needs to have as little friction and as few steps as possible for the user. And that's something that can't just be done in one sentence or a single prompt or a weekend or, anything like that. You really have to understand the problem, look through it, test it, and honestly, like take it back to the people you're serving and get them to give you their opinion, what they like, what they don't like, and reiterate until they're happy.
That makes sense. Yeah, and just continue to go back to, I guess, your community or whoever it is and
Yeah,
iterate.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like you said, community is definitely now a moat. I also think for a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, and founders, your background and your story and your journey is quite a big moat now too. I think that's like kind of the linchpin of like starting that community, and I think that's why it works so well in business.
Yeah, for sure. I think storytelling also it helps what your audience connect with you, and I think most of the time when you see a product, it's not the brand. You're thinking of kind of like the story behind the brand. And earlier on in a business, I think the best story to tell is the founder's story, and then maybe later on you can turn it into like Ronald McDonald or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's because the founder now is like, I think traditionally business was, it's always been about solving a problem, but I feel like business used to be very traditional where it's just business. And now we start really immersing ourselves and our identities into what we I think it's really cool to see how passionate founders are now about the problem that they're solving. And we're crazy. We will give up our personal time, our money, our savings, our effort, our friends. Like we'll give up so much in order to solve a problem that's weighing on us. And we're kind of a relentless bunch.
Yeah, for sure. Even kind of curious, is there anything you feel like people around you just don't see that you have to do on a day to day? Like because you are ending at the end of the day, you're managing what? A consultancy, you're managing a startup, you're also have to manage life. Like how does that
Yeah.
work?
So, in all honesty, as a solo founder, especially, really wanting to go all in on Winkly, I've taken a significant step back from consulting. I've kept two small clients just because we've had such a long working relationship, but I've really restructured a lot of my life in order to uh, build Winkly. And honestly, a lot of it as a solo founder, especially a non-technical founder, I kind of gave myself the term I'm like a technical non-technical founder, because I'm definitely a lot more technical than most people. But when you go to a technical founder, I'm not even close to that level of skill. And so it's a lot of research, trial and error, long hours, getting stuck on a bug, researching it, contacting friends for help, and asking if they can give some expertise on what you need to do in order to navigate the situation. And so yeah, and I think a lot of people don't see the, again, kind of just the worry, the pondering, the thinking about how can I make an impact? How can I build something substantial for somebody to make their lives better? How can I make the world better? I know those are quite loaded questions for
Yeah.
some, but it's something that a lot of people don't fully anticipate. And I will say hard to remember the big picture at times when, you're day in, day out. I'm not gonna lie, when I started Winkley, when I had the concept of, all right, I'm gonna do this, I believed that a lot of the AI was further ahead than it was. I was one of those people that got played initially, which is
Yeah.
shocking as somebody who's worked in tech and marketing for 12 years. Like, I feel like I should have known better. And so the delusional me thought I could spin this up in like 3 weeks and then I'd be off to the races. And here I am over a year later and, having beta users on an MVP. It feels like it's been a very long and slow road.
That makes sense. I guess it's when you zoom in, I think that's the funny thing. If when you zoom in, it always looks like it's like long and slow, but when you zoom out, you're like, "Oh my God, I've been zooming through all these different things."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's important to always like try to ground yourself and remind yourself, the bigger picture and what you're doing. And I think as a founder, you're always going to feel behind and like you're not doing enough.
Yeah, I feel like the goalpost just gets moved. And I think that's a good thing too. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, no, it moves. Funny in tech, tech moves so fast that traditionally, by the time you've like developed a feature, it's basically obsolete and you already have to move on to the next. Like it literally, I'm not even kidding you. Even with a bunch of MVPs that I had the privilege of leading and working on, we just kind of see the like how fast a feature is just not needed anymore. And it's quite literally like it's in triage, it's going through QA and getting ready to ship. And we're like, all right, well, we don't even care about it anymore. And we haven't even shipped before we like need, not that we didn't care. I guess I should rephrase. It's not as needed anymore. Or we need to
Yeah.
focus our resources and effort somewhere else. And so I think it's a good thing that the goalpost is moving. And I think as each day that you get closer to that goal, the realization that it is realistic comes into play. And so I think your vision starts to broaden, or at least your belief in your own vision starts to broaden, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're literally, yeah, that makes sense. You're just like slowly seeing the hope at the end of the tunnel and you're like, "Oh my God, it's getting brighter," and you're
Yeah. And
going
then you're
towards
like,
it.
might as well
Yeah.
make it bigger, right? So, yeah.
Speaking of problems though, kind of, or not problems, like I guess the problems you're trying to solve, kind of curious what it would look like for you or what it would look like for an average lash tech, I guess 5 years from now, if they have Winkley. What do you think that would actually look like?
Yeah. So, I hope in 5 years, if I were a lash tech or any lash tech on my platform, I would feel really empowered and secure in knowing that my business isn't a burden in terms of operations. A lot of lash techs, they're very passionate and hands on about their craft, but they don't really want to be hands on the admin and operation side. That's so tedious and time consuming because it takes them away from their craft. And lash techs have this very unique industry where the clients that come in, they're not just people that they, provide a service to. They become your best friend, your therapist, your family, and that's their connections. That's how I became best friends with my lash tech. We're best friends because she started lashing me and we just got along so well. And so I envision, like I said, they feel empowered. Their entire business is presented how they want and it functions with ease. And their clients know that they can trust the technicians on Winkley, and that this industry actually is as accessible as the rest of the beauty industry in terms of booking appointments with ease, finding a lash tech. Because, like, right now, because they don't have websites, they don't always use a platform, they have no brand presence except for an Instagram account. So, if you don't have a lash tech, you're literally on Instagram trying to just use it as a search browser
Like
to
search tool, yeah.
basically, yeah, exactly, to find a lash tech. I had to do that once and it was one of the worst experiences ever. I never want to have to find a lash tech again. Maybe I guess that'll be different on Winkley, is you'll be able to browse lash techs in your local area, see their ratings, and really connect with them and their business and their brand, because personal brands are just now, I believe, the new kind of business card or currency. You really have to identify yourself not just as a business, but as a founder or business owner or operator. And yeah, basically they I sorry, I totally lost my train of thought on that. I'm so sorry. I don't
Yeah,
know
no
where my
worries.
brain just went blank on that.
No, I was gonna say though, even with personal brand, I think it matters a lot, even
Right.
if you're just a normal person. I think personal brand impacts a lot of different things now,
Yeah.
especially social media. Like it's quite literally just become.
Yeah. And it helps people really connect with you. And when, again, you're running a service-based business and you become so close to that community, like you said, the community is a moat. And that doesn't just go for tech founders or large entrepreneurs, that even goes down to the Lash Tech. Their own community is their moat. That's how they built their business. And I've noticed these Lash Techs really put their own personality into their business, and it's quite a reflection on them. And so giving them the ability to do that and have their clients find the right fit for them, that's what's going to make the industry happier, healthier, safer, and just better. And then you can start to innovate and progress from there.
That makes sense. I
Yeah.
guess my last question, or this is my favorite question. I feel like most people who ever start a business decide to do anything, arts, creative, entrepreneurship, anything like that. It's usually not for the money anyway. So, kind of curious what the actual goal behind everything is. There like there's usually a story you're trying to say, or there's just something. I'm kind of curious what that something is.
Yeah, honestly, I just want to make a mark in this world. I want to do something substantial, and I want to make entrepreneurs and business owners, and honestly just women, feel empowered in being able to support themselves and live their dream life. And so, as fun and easy as it is to get caught up in, wanting to scale as fast as possible, exit in 5 years, and, have a million users, all of these like kind of vanity metrics, those are exciting, but there has to be a reason why you're doing that, and there has to be a point. And I honestly believe that if you don't have that why, it's just you're going to feel empty even when you hit those vanity metrics and those other kind of more standardized goals. And so, yeah, I just want to empower people to live their best life and, be able to support themselves if that's like the journey for them. And, even just clients in general that want to feel beautiful and want to trust the process. I just want to make the world a better and safer place, honestly. And like I said, I just want to do something substantial and like leave a mark. I time is the only thing that you can't get back. You can earn back money. You can, have friends come and go from your life, take breaks and that kind of stuff. But your time, once it's spent, it is gone forever. And the scariest part of that is no one really knows how much you have left in your, bank account, right? Like what that balance is. So you're spending every single day and not knowing what your budget is and how you're going to run out, right? So I just don't want to waste that time.
That makes sense. That's actually a beautiful place to end it, making the world a better place and making the most out of your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much. And I will end